So in this third video, in the first video, we talked about meandering. In the second video, we talked about phrasing, and I really recommend that you go back and watch those before you watch this video. But if you have already, let's go ahead and get started. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about some various effects that I think are really important to gain confidence. And, when you solo, what I'm talking about are the effects hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, bends, and vibrato. Those 5 things. And what you want to do is be able to execute these elements with absolute confidence, okay? And it takes time. Again, all these things take time to learn how to do, and you don't have to do them all at once. But learning how to do them comfortably is really important. So for me, let's start with the 2 slurring elements, which are hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, if I was using the same scale that we've been using, which is the A minor pentatonic, which, by the way, we're going to expand in the 4th video, but in this video, what I'm doing is just taking those notes. Now, I know I can pick them, but what I want to do is I want to start learning how to slur them for a different kind of effect and other purposes that we'll learn about in the guitar course. But at the very least, what it does is it creates this sort of legato effect. So instead of picking everything, which creates that really staccato sound, which sounds great, but what I can do is start using some hammer-ons or pull-offs and slides. You see that? Now, when I was younger, sliding meant I was moving from some position to another position. Or I was moving from the lower part of the guitar to the higher part, or whatever it might be. That's what sliding was to me, and it's still an element. Don't get me wrong. I definitely do that. So if I was, it gets me from lower down to higher up, or whatever it might be. But later on, I started learning that sliding is actually a really great technique that you can use from a slurring or legato sense as well. So if I was playing in this first position of minor pentatonic, I could play a note and then slide into that exact same note again. You see, to move around in between the notes that are here, instead of moving to other positions, you can use that sliding as a technique or an effect to it doesn't necessarily get you from, lower to higher, but it just sounds really neat. And then I can use my hammer-ons or my pull-offs. And you can get some really neat sounds by doing that. Okay, now again, I'm going to go into much greater detail in that in the guitar course if that's something you're interested in. And if not, it's cool. Just you want to try and study these things and really get a mastery of being able to execute them so they sound good, right? That's one of the most important things. It isn't, what I've learned about teaching and playing and all these different things is sometimes it isn't this grand thing that's going to change your life. It's sometimes just small things that you learn how to do better, right? And if you look at great guitar players, regardless of what style of music you like to listen to, they have a mastery of executing certain techniques on the guitar, whether it's a speed thing or whether it's a vibrato. Like I think of like David Gilmour, who's got an incredible vibrato, right? He's got an incredible sense of bending, things like that. Or Eric Clapton or something like that, versus a speed player like Yngwie Malmsteen or Paul Gilbert or whoever it might be that has a great sense of picking, right? Or something like that. And there's just a whole host of players out there that do different things. And so the more time we spend on these various techniques, the better we get at being able to execute them. And therefore, the more we use them in our playing, and we can figure out how to use them more creatively, right? So now let's get to vibrato and bending. So vibrato, now, vibrato can be done a lot of different ways, but what I think about with vibrato is that when you do a vibrato, you should do it with control. Like, don't have your vibrato be way too, fast and all this sort of thing. And, a lot of times there's different ways to do it. So please understand that my way isn't the only way. There's lots of ways to do these things. But the way I execute a vibrato is that I'll grab onto the guitar. Let's say I'm going to the 5th fret of the 3rd string. And what I'm doing is I'm actually touching down here against the bottom of the guitar. So I can use my wrist like I'm opening a doorknob to control how wide and how fast you see? So I can make it faster or slower. And so depending on the circumstance I find myself in, or the jam that I'm doing, or the style of music that it is, I might change up that vibrato. But I have the control because I can decide how much I want to widen it or speed it up or slow it down or whatever the case may be. So getting comfortable in understanding that vibrato isn't just shaking the string. I suppose in theory that's what it is. But it's really, and there's an art to it that I want you to really think about. Okay? And then bending is going to be the same thing. Now, bending, the number one rule with bending is you want to bend it in tune, right? You're bending a note, you're taking the string and bending it to something else. So if I was here on the 8th fret and I want to go to the 10th fret, I want to bend it until I hear that sound. If I bend it out of tune, it kind of sounds like I'm talking to aliens or something like that. You don't want to do that. You want to learn to gain control of these various techniques, okay? And they require time, they require practice, but be aware of it. Don't just be introduced to a bend or a vibrato and go, okay, I understand the concept, so I'm just going to start bending. It's all in which fingers you're using and you know, the distance that you're bending and the string tension and all these different things make a difference in the effectiveness of that bend, and of course, practicing it over and over and over. So those effects, those 5 elements, I call them vocal elements, okay? Because they bring our playing closer to what a voice might do, right? Hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, bends, and vibratos. So be aware of those things and begin practicing those more. And again, don't feel overwhelmed. You don't have to do them all at the same time. If you find that maybe sliding is something that you're really interested in, maybe start with just learning more about sliding, okay? Now, in the last video, what we're going to do is we're going to expand this scale that we're using right now, this pentatonic, to add some more colorful sounds to it.